All right, so today we're diving into a career path that you might not hear about every day, but it's one that plays a surprisingly crucial role in our communities. We're talking about justices of the peace.
Absolutely. And we've got some really interesting research from RoleCatcher to help us unpack this role.
Yeah, their insights are fascinating. So imagine this. Your neighbor's prize-winning oak tree decides to dump a whole lot of branches right on your property line. Maybe even takes out part of your fence, too. You've tried talking to your neighbor about it, but no luck.
Mhm.
Things have escalated into a full-blown property line feud.
Ah, the classic good fences make bad neighbors dilemma.
Exactly. So who do you call in a situation like that? Who swoops in to resolve these hyper-local conflicts?
Well, in many cases, it's the justice of the peace. They're often the first line of defense in these kinds of disputes, helping to keep the peace in the community, or at least trying to.
It's interesting you say keep the peace because it makes me think of them as more than just a judge in a courtroom. The research you send over from RoleCatcher really emphasizes that community leader aspect.
Yeah, it's not just about knowing the laws and statutes, it's about understanding the people and dynamics within a community.
And they even highlight how important it is to be a people person. That being able to relate to people is just as vital as knowing legal jargon.
And what's so fascinating is how RoleCatcher's AI analysis of job descriptions actually backs that up.
Oh, really?
They have this skills analysis feature that examines thousands of job specs and teases out those skills that might not be so obvious. Like for a justice of the peace, it emphasizes the need for active listening, conflict resolution, and even the ability to read those subtle social cues during a hearing. It's not just about understanding the law, it's about understanding the people the law is meant to govern.
So it's almost like being part legal expert, part neighborhood therapist. You're not just interpreting the law, you're interpreting the people the law is meant to serve.
Exactly. A justice of the peace often deals with people at their most stressed, frustrated, maybe even vulnerable. And that requires a deft hand, not just with legal precedent, but with human emotion as well.
For someone who might be interested in this kind of work, this blend of law and community engagement, what else does RoleCatcher reveal about what a justice of the peace actually does day to day?
Well, their guide points out that it's not all high-stakes courtroom drama like you might see on TV. A lot of a justice of the peace's time is actually spent on tasks that might seem mundane but are still crucial, like issuing warrants, officiating marriages, and dealing with minor offenses such as vandalism.
Wait, hold on, officiating marriages, that's in their job description.
It is. That's what makes this career so interesting. You're dealing with the full spectrum of human experience, from the joyous to the contentious.
That's quite a range. It makes you wonder what kind of person thrives in an environment that's equal parts courtroom and community center.
That's a great question. And RoleCatcher's data actually provides some insights there, too. They've observed that successful justices of the peace tend to have a unique blend of legal knowledge, emotional intelligence, and a genuine desire to serve their community.
So they need that wisdom to apply the law fairly and the compassion to do it with empathy.
Exactly.
It sounds like it takes a special kind of person.
Yeah.
But let's get practical for a second. Let's say someone listening is thinking, this sounds fascinating, but how do I even get started? What does the path to becoming a justice of the peace actually look like?
Well, that's where RoleCatcher's Career Compass tool can be super helpful. It's designed to help you explore all the different sides of a career, especially those less obvious things that might really resonate with you. Like, let's say you're really intrigued by the idea of officiating weddings, but the rest of the job description, not so much.
Yeah, I can see that. Weddings are nice.
Right. Well, the Career Compass can help you zero in on those specific skills and interests and connect you with other roles where those are more central.
So it's a way to personalize your career exploration, find those paths that really light you up. But before we get ahead of ourselves, before we start officiating any weddings or mediating any property disputes, what are the typical entry points into this field?
Sure. According to RoleCatcher, a lot of aspiring justices of the peace start by getting experience in related legal fields. That could mean working as a paralegal, maybe as a legal assistant, or even volunteering at a courthouse.
So getting your feet wet in the legal world, even if it's not the exact role you're aiming for.
Exactly. That hands-on experience is so valuable. It's one thing to read about legal procedures or conflict resolution techniques in a book, but actually applying them in real-life situations, that's where the real learning happens.
It's like they say experience is the best teacher, especially in a field where you're dealing with the law and, let's face it, the unpredictable nature of people. So someone's gained some experience, they're ready to take that next step. What does the actual career ladder look like for a justice of the peace?
RoleCatcher's guide lays out a pretty typical progression, starting with entry-level positions like a Justice of the Peace assistant.
Okay, so picture this. You're fresh out of paralegal school, maybe a little starstruck by the whole legal system. What kind of tasks would you be doing at that entry level?
Think of it as building that foundation. At that level, you'd be assisting with administrative work, handling paperwork, maybe even sitting in on some hearings to see how a justice of the peace runs things in the courtroom.
So it's a mix of behind-the-scenes support and some front-row learning.
Exactly. You're learning the ropes, how cases flow, the different types of disputes that a justice of the peace might handle.
And then from there, you'd start climbing that metaphorical courthouse ladder. What does the next rung look like?
As you gain experience and expertise, you might move into a junior justice of the peace position. This is where you start taking on more responsibility, handling smaller cases on your own, maybe even mediating those minor disputes.
So you're still under the wing of a more seasoned justice of the peace, but you're starting to get your hands a little dirty, so to speak.
Exactly. And this is where those soft skills we were talking about, like active listening and conflict resolution, really become crucial. You're interacting with people directly, trying to help them find some common ground.
It sounds like a real balancing act. Applying the law, but also understanding the human side of every case.
Absolutely. Finding that balance between impartiality and empathy, making sure justice is served, but also treating everyone involved with respect. It's not always easy.
And as you navigate all of that, you continue to climb that career ladder. So what does the view look like from that mid-level rung? What does a mid-career justice of the peace do?
At that point, a justice of the peace has usually built a solid reputation for being fair and knowledgeable. They're handling a more diverse range of cases, presiding over more complex hearings, and maybe even supervising junior staff.
Okay, so they've gone from learning the ropes to mentoring others.
Exactly. They become a resource for their colleagues, sharing their knowledge and experience to help guide that next generation of justice of the peace professionals.
I like that. A career path that allows for both personal and professional growth, but also contributes to the development of others. That's a powerful combination. Now, I'm curious about the top of that career ladder. What does it take to reach those upper levels, to become a senior level justice of the peace?
Reaching that senior level really speaks to a career built on integrity, strong judgment, and a deep commitment to serving the community. Senior justices of the peace, they're often sought out for their wisdom and their experience.
So they're the veterans of the legal world, the ones who have seen it all and guided countless people through the system.
You got it. They've earned that respect both in and out of the courtroom, and their decisions carry a lot of weight. They're not just upholding the law, but they're also shaping how justice is carried out in their communities.
A position of great responsibility and incredible impact.
No doubt about it. And, it's worth noting that RoleCatcher doesn't just present these career stages in a vacuum. They provide real-world examples of individuals at each level. You can read about their journeys, their challenges, and what they've found most rewarding.
So it's like getting a behind-the-scenes look at how real people have navigated this career path. It makes it much more tangible. Speaking of tangible, let's address the elephant in the room, that emotional toll this kind of work can take. The guide mentioned that it can be emotionally challenging. Can you elaborate on what some of those challenges might be?
You're right, it's an important aspect to consider. We've talked about the intellectual challenges and the rewards, but the truth is, justices of the peace often have to deal with some of the tougher aspects of human nature. They see firsthand the impact of conflict, of trauma, even injustice.
They're not just reading about these issues. They're seeing the real-life consequences, the human cost.
Right. And that can definitely take a toll. They have to maintain composure in very emotionally charged situations, and they have to make impartial decisions that will impact people's lives in very real ways. It's a heavy burden to carry.
It makes you realize that even those in positions of authority, those tasked with upholding the law, are still human. They have emotions, they have vulnerabilities.
And acknowledging that human element, that's so important, both for their own well-being and for approaching the job with empathy.
It's about remembering the human face of justice.
Perfectly said.
And, it's really striking how much this role, being a justice of the peace, highlights the intersection of, well, the law and the community, right?
Absolutely.
It's not just about knowing the legal jargon. It's about really understanding the people and the stories, the human side of it all.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important aspect of this job. You're often acting as a bridge between these sometimes very complicated legal processes and the everyday realities of people's lives.
Right, you're making the law make sense to people who might feel intimidated or overwhelmed by the whole legal system.
Precisely, and that takes a special set of skills. You need to be able to listen with an open mind, be willing to see all sides, and then figure out solutions that are legally sound, but also, take into account the human element.
Yeah, finding that balance between, like, upholding the law but doing it with compassion.
Exactly, and that's what makes this career path so interesting. It's challenging, for sure, but ultimately incredibly rewarding.
Well said. Well, for our listeners who are feeling inspired, maybe a little intrigued by this career path, we'll make sure to include all the resources we talked about in our show notes.
Yes, and don't forget to check out RoleCatcher's website. They've got a ton of information and tools, especially if you're thinking about making a career change or just want to explore different options. They were super helpful in putting together today's deep dive.
They really were. So whether you're considering a career as a justice of the peace or just curious about the inner workings of our legal system, we hope you found this deep dive insightful and engaging. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, stay curious.